Hello there, what is up guys? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review, and today is one of those super fun days because we're going to discuss Metroid and E3. So we're definitely counting down the days until E3 begins. We are less than a week as of today, the day that I'm recording this video. Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, everyone is going to be taking the stage at some point in different ways to address everyone about whatever it is they're planning to show at E3 and hopefully surprise us and give us all of these details and these things. Of course, I've discussed Nintendo many times, most of the time, because I am mostly a Nintendo-focused channel, and through that, there's been a lot of theorizing and guessing, and the internet has been going crazy when it comes to theories and guesses, which happens every year at E3, which is part of the reason that I love it. I just think this is the coolest time, especially now that we live in an age where the internet and YouTube and content creators and all of these gamers and fellow nerds and dorks just like me can have this little YouTube channel and kind of talk to everyone about it, and we start theorizing and guessing and predicting and placing bets and all of these fun things about what might happen at E3. And it's a blast. Like, I really try not to take for granted the fact that we live in this really cool time, and I'm fortunate to have this channel so I can talk to you guys about E3, about video games, about Nintendo, and about Metroid. And speaking of Metroid, let's get into the goods here, because Metroid is a pretty big deal, especially going into this E3, because the Switch is out, it's brand new, it's a huge hit, everyone's loving it, there are a lot of questions for the future, and there have been a lot of rumors about what's going to happen with Nintendo at E3. One of the biggest rumors has circulated around what my favorite series is, Metroid and Samus, and what's going to happen there, and are we going to see Metroid finally return? We've been waiting for far too long for Metroid to truly return. And I've discussed this before. I mean, Metroid Prime Federation Force on the 3DS is not a terrible game. It's not even a bad game. In fact, it's a pretty darn good game. But it doesn't really deliver on the Metroid goods and the Samus kind of exploration feel that we obviously wanted out of a Metroid game. It came at a very unfortunate time for the game because there was nothing else happening in the world of Metroid. Everyone was waiting for the first console game since Other M in 2010, and of course I always have to bring this up. I love Other M, but a lot of people didn't. So there's been this huge gap in time since a lot of people have gotten the Metroid game that they feel that they enjoyed. So there's just so much going on there. Federation Force comes out at this time when everyone was hoping to hear from Metroid in a truer fashion, and that game really didn't have an opportunity to land or find an audience for that reason, and I half understand and half think that it was kind of overstated. At the end of the day, it was a fine game, but it's not Metroid, it's not Samus. Now, over the last few months leading up to E3 and Nintendo's Spotlight, which is going to happen on Tuesday, June 13th, just a couple of days from now, oh my freaking gosh. And throughout these last couple of months, rumors about what might be happening with Metroid have been circulating. Is Retro making the game? Some people say yes, some people say no, some people say maybe. Is Metroid going to even be present? Some people say yes, some people say no. Is Metroid going to be there in more than one game? Some people say yes, some people say no. That's been a big rumor, is that there's not even just that Metroid is going to appear at E3 this year, but that there's actually 2 Metroid games being developed. And some people say Retro, some people say not for one of those 2 games, and that both of these games are going to show up at E3 this year, amongst many other things, many other rumors and theories and stuff about what's happening with Metroid. I've been very vocal about the fact that I personally do not feel or believe that Metroid will show up at E3 this year. And it's very hard for me to say that because, again, I am the biggest Metroid fan. I mean, I'm the Metroid fan who loves Other M and really enjoyed Federation Force. I mean, I've never played a bad Metroid game. The worst, I use air quotes here, the worst of the Metroid games, I don't even dislike. So I am all about some Samus. I am ready to have her back and that series back and do something more with that world. But I don't believe that it's going to be showcased at E3 this year, despite the fact that these rumors have been showing up saying Metroid's coming, 2 Metroid games are coming. So there's a couple of reasons why I don't believe that there's any Metroid game being shown at this year's show. And before I get any further into the details, it should be noted that this is just my opinion, just my theory. I'm just one guy, one gamer, one Metroid fan, throwing his gut feeling out there for you guys on the internet. Also, it should be noted before I go any deeper, anything could happen. Obviously, we live in that world where, for all I know, there are 2 Metroid games being developed, and they are going to show up next week at E3 at Nintendo Spotlight. Or there will be 1 game, or hell, maybe there's even 3 games being made. I mean, anything is always possible here. We don't really truly know. Only Nintendo knows, and only the people making Metroid know. I don't know, you don't know, other YouTube channels doesn't know, IGN doesn't know. Only Nintendo does. And I've said it many times, you guys, I do believe Nintendo is working on a Metroid game for the Switch specifically, if not other things, right here and now. I do absolutely believe it, but I still don't think it's going to show up at E3. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first thing I want to get to is based on some of the feeling that I think the internet and a lot of us and myself have been feeling about Nintendo and what to maybe expect at their spotlight. You know, yesterday they had their Pokemon Direct, which didn't give a lot of Pokemon fans what they were really looking for out of it. I was curious to see what was going to happen as a non-Pokemon fan. And from the outside looking in, it seems like people weren't really satisfied. I didn't see anything very exciting for me, you know, to make me want to finally pick up a Pokemon game. And through that, some of the other messaging about the spotlight, I think, and a lot of people are starting to think this as well, I think we might actually be getting far less surprises from Nintendo this year than we maybe thought even just a week ago. Typically, when you think of E3, when you think of Nintendo at E3, or any company really, you think of surprises. I discussed this a few days ago in a video. You think of what is this company or that company going to bring or show on stage or show in a digital event that we didn't know about. Is this game going to show up? Is this sequel going to show up? Is this company going to show a new IP? Is this or this or this going to happen? Will Nintendo give us another one more thing moment like they did with Twilight Princess? We always want that to happen, but hearing Nintendo talk about what they're planning on doing, the fact that there's rumors based on schedule, which is only theory, not official, some things are starting to say maybe the spotlight's only going to be half an hour. I don't know that I believe it, but if it's true, that doesn't leave a lot of room for surprises. And we know that as soon as the spotlight's over, they go right into the treehouse, and the treehouse is also not known for surprises. The treehouse just shows what we already know. They don't debut new games there. They debut new games in a trailer, or in a Nintendo Direct, or at an E3 digital event, and then they show it at the treehouse. So with half an hour to the spotlight, where we know they're going to almost primarily focus on Mario, is there even room for them to showcase something as massive as a brand new Metroid game? I don't really think so. Granted, the spotlight could end up being 45 minutes or even an hour long, and suddenly the chances of Metroid showing up do start to increase if it's longer than half an hour. But they've talked about focusing on 2017 games, all these different things. It's just hard for me to believe that we're going to see Metroid, because I think Nintendo isn't bringing a whole lot of actual quantifiable shocking surprises to the show. One of the other reasons I don't think Metroid is going to show up this year also kind of builds off of something I said a second ago, and it's the fact that Nintendo's also been pretty transparent about the fact that this E3, just like almost all of their E3s, is probably going to primarily focus on 2017 releases only. Now that, yes, they have used the word we're going to focus on 2017 games. That verbiage is in Nintendo's first release about the spotlight from Nintendo. People have pointed out that focusing on 2017 doesn't mean only 2017. They could show a couple of things for the future, and that is true. So it does leave a tiny window of chance for 2018 games, which does leave an even tinier chance that one of those games could be Metroid. And if they're planning Metroid for next year, maybe it would be one of the few things they squeeze into the spotlight that isn't a 2017 release. But honestly, you guys, that margin is so tiny, it's so teeny tiny, that not only do I not expect a lot of, you know, games beyond 2017, what are the chances that one of them would even be Metroid? It just doesn't seem like something Nintendo would be doing right now. And reminding you guys that I firmly want to be wrong with my theory. I want there to be a Metroid game ready to show. I want there to be a Metroid game next week at E3. Hell, I want more than anything for there to be 2 Metroid games. If they were giving us like a next-gen Switch Metroid and then like an awesome 2D 3DS Metroid, I would freak out. Like, I am ready to welcome that into my world, you guys. And I acknowledge, like I said, anything could happen, so maybe that is true, but I don't believe it, because I just have this realistic approach. I'm trying to temper my expectations, and it's hard for me to see that. Hearing Nintendo talk about focusing on 2017 titles at their E3 spotlight, where we know there's plenty of 2017 titles they can fill that time up with, and whether it's half an hour or an hour's worth or what have you, there's a lot of stuff that they could show us for this year's Splatoon, Xenoblade, Fire Emblem Warriors. We know they're going to spend like probably more than half of their whole thing just on Mario alone. It's hard for me to believe that in that 2017 focus spotlight, there's going to be room for this future Metroid game. Because, by the way, even if they are making a Metroid, there is no way that that game would possibly be a 2017 title. There's another element to the Metroid conversation here that I think people haven't really been thinking about or talking about, but it's kind of been a light bulb in my brain the last day or so, and I realized I wanted to throw it onto this discussion as well. And if we look at Metroid in terms of its actual sales and monetary success, overall, Metroid has been a very successful and profitable series for Nintendo. I mean, there really is no doubt. It's somewhere between like 18 and 20 million total units sold worldwide. from, you know, accounting for every single game within the Metroid series, which is somewhere in the range of like 7 or 8 titles, I would think, between handhelds and consoles. And that's great. That's really good. That's a successful series. It's been around for decades. It's been known as one of the first premier huge series and titles within the current relevant video game age, when Nintendo brought the industry back from the crash in 1983. And Samus has been a very important character, and that's all great. So we love Metroid. It does sell pretty well, but it obviously doesn't sell like Nintendo's other big series. Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon, which are the other huge franchises Nintendo has, as well as a lot of Metroid games have sold in the past. They've never done that well. I mean, Metroid Prime, almost 2 million. Metroid Primes 2 and 3, somewhere around 1 million. Other M might have just barely scraped past 1 million. And all the other games, probably less than 1 million. I mean, I don't really have the hard numbers here, you guys, but I know that some of that stuff's about true. The point is, no one title has sold millions upon millions upon millions. Like what the Mario and Mario Kart and Smash Brother and Pokemon games of the world do sell, in the Zelda games, those sell multiples of millions. And as much as the world and the gamer and the reviewer and the industry loves Metroid, because those games also review off the charts and the gamers just welcome them, so they embrace them because we know how good they are, it just hasn't sold like that. And so, looking at where the Switch is currently, if we think about a new Metroid game that's a Switch release, yes, the Switch is doing well and selling out like crazy, but the Switch only has a handful of millions of units sold right now on the market. I feel like Nintendo announcing a Metroid this year and releasing it within even the next calendar year, between E3 this year and E3 next year, doesn't make sense, because Metroid, as much as it's a series that would probably do okay, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a system seller on its own. And I think that that series, to really see widespread success, needs, I hate to say it, all the help it can get, or at least a lot of help in terms of having a lot of opportunity for a lot of people to pick it up. If there's only 3 or 4 million Switches out there, then that's not that many people that are going to run out and buy a Metroid game. If there's 20 or 30 or 50 million Switches out there, if the game released in like 2019, for example, man, that game has a way better shot, just like any series, but Metroid specifically, which doesn't sell as well as Nintendo's other series, that game all of a sudden has a much better chance of selling a lot better than it would on a console with less units out there. And the reason I bring that up is because, you know, I alluded to this a second ago, any game on any platform ever has those same odds. It's totally true. The more units, the more any game could sell. But Nintendo has this unique touch when it comes to their attach rate, and you look at how well games like Smash and Mario Kart sold on the Wii U, which barely sold any units, they could still move between 5 and 8 million copies of those games. Sorry. And same with Breath of the Wild, obviously selling extremely well as the console launched with only a couple of units out there. Splatoon's going to do the same, Odyssey's going to do the same. These are the series that we know can sell regardless of how many units are out there. Metroid, as much as it's my favorite, doesn't really have that kind of pull. So I think that Nintendo would be looking at this as an opportunity to say, yes, we're making a Metroid, but it's not going to come out in the first year or even the first almost 2 years of the Switch's life. We need to give it time to have more Switches out there to aid in the sales and the possible success of Metroid. And it's hard to say that that's 100% what Nintendo's thinking, but I feel pretty good, you guys, that that's probably a large part of Nintendo's thinking as far as when to release this game and when to first show it off. And through that, I think that game is farther off than we want to think, and if it's that far away, there's no way they're going to show it, I don't think, next week at E3 2017. So those are a couple of the biggest reasons why it's hard for me to believe that Metroid is going to show up at E3 this year, just a couple of days from now. You know, beyond these couple of things, it's also just a gut feeling, you guys. To be honest, a huge part of what I see and what I feel is just literally my instinct as a gamer, as a Nintendo fan, and a Metroid fan. I've been doing all of these things since I've been a little kid, gaming, playing on Nintendo, playing Metroid games, since I'm like 4 or 5 years old in like early 1980s. And so I just have this gut feeling that when I hear rumors that, oh, Metroid's finally going to show up this year, oh, they're making 2 Metroid games and they're going to be at E3 next week, it just doesn't sit right with me in terms of my willingness to believe it. It just doesn't feel like a true, accurate thing. Again, is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. Metroid might show up next week, and that would be great. 2 Metroid games might show up next week, and that would be even better. Maybe Retro is making a game. Maybe it's Metroid Prime 4. Maybe it's a different game. Maybe it's a 2D side-scroller. Maybe it's a 3DS game, not a Switch game. I mean, all of these things are possible, or maybe it doesn't show up and mums the word about Metroid for at least another year, as per my theory. And that's what I think. That's what I'm sticking to. And I think that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here. Really excited to talk about Metroid and E3 because I love hearing people start to talk more about the theories and the fact that we all want Metroid and maybe it's going to show up in all these rumors because they get me excited. All I think of whenever I hear that stuff is, please let me be wrong, please let me be wrong, please let me be wrong. But I feel like I'm not wrong, you guys, and I guess time will tell. Just, within the next week, we're all going to know if Nintendo did truly bring a brand new Metroid title to E3, if they're giving us Samus again, and if it's a 2017, 2018, 2019 title, who knows. But we'll find out in a week what's going on. But I feel like a safer bet is to probably trust in what I'm laying out here, guys. I would not get my hopes up for Metroid or Samus showing up at E3 next week, at least in terms of a brand new game. We might see like a trilogy remaster. But if we're going to look at just new games, that's what I feel. And that's it, guys. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in. Love talking Metroid. Love talking Samus. Love talking Nintendo. Love talking E3 with you guys. Hopefully you guys are super pumped and jazzed, whether you expect Metroid or not. But I do want to hear your theories. Do you agree with my theories that it won't show up? Do you think that it will show up? Do you think 2 games are going to show up? Talk about that stuff below. Talk about Metroid. Talk about E3. Thanks, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.